I'm going to tell you something that still feels unreal to say out loud, even after all these years. People like to think they know how they'll react under pressure, how they'll behave when everything suddenly goes dark and the world drops out from under their feet. I thought I knew myself too. I thought I was tough, calm, capable. But nothing prepares you for the moment when the ground literally opens beneath you and swallows you whole. And before I say anything else, let me give you one warning. The worst part wasn't the fall. It was realizing that nobody could reach me. Not for hours, not for days. That moment, when you scream for help and the world above is silent, that's when your mind starts breaking long before your body does. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that cave. The truth is, I didn't even know it existed. I was hiking a familiar trail, one I'd walked so many times that I didn't bother checking the map anymore. It was early autumn, the kind of day where the air feels cold enough to wake you up, but warm enough to keep you moving. The leaves had just started to shift to orange, and everything smelled like pine and damp earth. I remember feeling good, strong even. I'd been pushing myself, trying to get back into shape, trying to clear my head. Funny how life sets you up with a calm morning before it hits you with something that'll follow you for the rest of your life. I'd gone off the main path. Not far, just enough to get closer to the sound of running water. There was a stream I liked to sit near, a quiet place where you could hear nothing but the current and the wind. I took one step onto what looked like solid ground, a patch of soil covered in moss and thin roots. And then I heard it, that sound, the soft crumble followed by a sharp crack, like ice breaking. Before I could even curse, the earth gave out beneath me. I remember the fall in flashes, my stomach rising into my throat, a burst of cold air rushing upward, my hands scraping at nothing, the violent thud as my hips smashed against a rock. Then another drop, then darkness. I didn't lose consciousness, but I wished I had. When I finally stopped falling, I was on my side, wedged between sharp rocks, every breath stabbing through my ribs. Dirt rained down on me from above, tiny pebbles bouncing off my face. For a long moment, I just lay there, stunned, listening to my heartbeat hammering in my ears. Then the pain hit all at once. My right leg felt wrong, hot and cold at the same time. My ribs burned. My head throbbed like someone was driving nails into my skull, and everything around me was pitch black except for one thin beam of light slicing down through the hole I'd fallen through. At first, that light felt like hope, a sign that maybe the fall hadn't been that deep. But when I tried to move, I felt how broken my body really was. My leg screamed in agony. When I reached down to touch it, I felt the unnatural shape. Not a clean break, more like something twisted, bent where it shouldn't bend. The first time I tried to sit up, I nearly blacked out from the pain. I don't know how long I lay there before I tried calling for help. Minutes? Hours? Time loses meaning when you're fighting your own body. But eventually I tilted my head back toward the thin circle of daylight and yelled, "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" My voice echoed through the cave. It bounced off stone walls and came back to me distorted. I screamed again, louder, until my throat went raw and my chest burned. I screamed until the echo sounded like someone else crying out with me. No answer. The silence that followed felt heavier than the rocks around me. I dragged myself a little, not far, just enough to shift into a position that didn't feel like knives stabbing my spine. The cave floor was cold, damp. Every movement sent a shock through my leg. But staying still hurt too. My body felt like it was shutting down, overwhelmed, trying to protect itself. Minutes passed. Then hours. The beam of light above me shifted slowly as the sun moved, and I realized I had fallen much deeper than I thought. What looked like an arm's reach of daylight was probably 30 feet up, maybe 50. The first night was the longest night of my life. I didn't sleep. Not really. I drifted in and out, half conscious, shivering violently. The cold seeped into my bones. Rats, or something like rats, scuttled somewhere deeper in the cave. I heard water dripping rhythmically from the ceiling, and every few minutes, pain would flare up my leg or through my ribs, jolting me awake again. But the worst was the moment when the light faded completely, and the cave swallowed me in absolute darkness. I didn't know darkness could feel physical until that night. It pressed against me like a weight, like something alive, like it was waiting for me to stop fighting. I talked to myself just to hear a human voice. Okay. Breathe. Someone will find you. Someone must have heard something, but the truth is, nobody knew where I was. I hadn't told anyone I'd gone hiking. I didn't have cell service even before the fall. And that stream I was heading toward? It wasn't on any official trail. Around what I guessed was midnight, I heard something above me. Voices. Rustling. A beam of artificial light cut through the dark. It flickered, moving around like someone waving a flashlight. I felt adrenaline rush through me so fast I nearly passed out again. "Hey, down here! I'm down here!" I screamed with everything I had. My voice broke. I heard the flashlight pause, then move away. The voices faded. The light disappeared. They hadn't heard me. That moment broke something inside me. The hope I'd been clinging to cracked like the earth that swallowed me. For the first time, I seriously wondered if I was going to die down there, alone, buried under the world where no one would ever find me. When the second day came, I realized something else. I wasn't just injured. I was trapped. Completely trapped. Every surface around me sloped downward or upward too steeply for me to climb. The walls were jagged, but not enough to grip. My leg couldn't support me even if they were. And in the dim light, I could see that the ground around the hole I'd fallen through was unstable. Even if rescuers found the opening, they might not be able to reach me safely. My water bottle had smashed in the fall, completely useless. I licked condensation off the cave wall just to keep my throat from sealing shut. It tasted like metal and dirt, and I didn't care. I needed anything. The hunger came next. Not the sharp pangs at first, just a sick, empty feeling that slowly grew into something gnawing, twisting deep inside me. I tried to ignore it by focusing on the light overhead. It was all I had left to hold on to. The only thing anchoring me to the world outside. Sometime, hours, maybe, into that second day, I heard a deep rumble somewhere below me, a low growl of shifting rock. The cave shook slightly, dust falling onto my face. I froze, terrified that even breathing might trigger another collapse. It was then I realized I had fallen into something far bigger than a simple hole. This wasn't a small cave. It was part of an entire underground system. If another section collapsed, I could be buried completely. I forced myself to stay awake, afraid that if I drifted off and something shifted again, I wouldn't wake up. On the third day, something changed. I woke to a stronger beam of light, brighter than before, shining straight down through the opening. More voices, more footsteps. I heard metal tools, clanking, scraping. Someone yelled something I couldn't make out. I tried to respond, but my voice barely worked anymore. Down. Here. It sounded like a whisper. Pathetic. Weak. I coughed and tried again, forcing the sound out of my chest, even though it felt like tearing. "Down here! I'm here!" The noises above paused. For a long second, I thought I'd imagined it. Then, a voice. Clear. Close. "Hello? Is someone down there?" My whole body shook with relief. I laughed and cried at the same time, the sound echoing through the cave. "Yes, I'm here. I'm here, please. Please, help me." And that was the moment I learned the truth that nearly destroyed me. They knew I was there. But they couldn't reach me. Not yet. The ground around the hole was too unstable. If they sent someone down without the right gear, the entire opening could collapse. They said they were trying to widen it slowly, safely, that specialized rescuers were on the way, that they wouldn't leave until they got me out. And I believed them. I wanted to believe them. But when the sun set again and their lights faded, replaced by lamps that barely pierced the darkness, I realized something. I wouldn't be getting out that day. Or the next. Or maybe even the next. Because the cave wasn't done with me yet. I don't know how long I cried after hearing those rescuers call down to me. It was like my body finally allowed me to release everything I'd been holding in. The fear, the exhaustion, the pain, it all hit me at once. But after that first wave passed, something else settled in. Something colder. The realization that this nightmare wasn't ending anytime soon. They kept talking to me from above. Their voices drifted down through the shaft every few minutes. They asked questions, tried to keep me awake, told me they were reinforcing the ground around the opening so they could send equipment down. They even lowered a small glow stick on a rope. It didn't reach me, but the gesture felt like a lifeline. Still, as daylight faded again and the temperature in the cave dropped, I understood I was facing another night down there. The third night. The longest one yet. My mind was starting to play tricks on me. Shadows moved where nothing should move. I hallucinated light in the corner of my vision, like someone else was in the cave with me. At one point, I swore I heard footsteps approaching from deeper inside the cave, slow and wet, like something dragging across the stone. I pressed myself against the wall, and didn't move for what felt like hours. It wasn't real. At least I hope it wasn't real. But fear has a way of making everything feel possible. When I woke the next morning, it wasn't because of voices or light. It was because of pain so intense it made me scream. My leg felt like it was on fire, pulsing in waves that radiated through my entire body. Every throb made my vision blur. I couldn't tell if the bone had shifted during the night, or if my body was simply shutting down from shock, dehydration, and infection. I couldn't even sit up anymore. Every attempt sent a shock through my ribs and down my spine. My throat was so dry I could barely swallow. My lips were cracked and bleeding. My tongue felt swollen. I stopped trying to yell because every sound tore at my throat like broken glass. The rescuers tried to talk to me that morning, but my responses were barely audible. They told me reinforcements were on the way. Professional cave rescuers, climbers, engineers, people who knew how to handle collapses like this. But here's the thing I learned later. Hidden caves like the one I fell into aren't mapped. They're unstable, unpredictable, often connected to entire underground networks. The rescuers were terrified that any mistake could send tons of rock down onto me. So they worked slowly, carefully, painfully carefully. At some point, they lowered a bottle of water tied to a rope. It didn't reach me. I watched it swing above my head like some kind of cruel mirage, just far enough out of reach that I could smell the plastic but not taste a drop. Around midday, at least I think it was midday, I heard a new set of voices, deeper, more controlled. One of them talked directly to me, his voice echoing through the shaft. My name is Daniel. I'm with the cave rescue team. We're going to get you out, but you have to hold on. You hear me? I managed a weak sound. Maybe it was a yes. Maybe it was just breath. But he heard something, because he kept talking. We're drilling next. You'll hear noise. It's loud, but it's good. It means progress. Drilling. I wanted to be relieved. I wanted to feel hope again. But when the sound started, this deep, violent grinding that shook the cave, I panicked. The vibrations felt like they were coming from inside my skull. Dirt rained onto my face. Pebbles bounced off my chest. Every instinct screamed at me that the cave was collapsing again. I pressed my hands over my ears and curled inward as much as my broken body allowed. I cried and begged them to stop, but I don't think they heard me over the machinery. At some point, I must have passed out again, because the drilling stopped, and when I opened my eyes, the beam of light above me was larger, not much, but noticeably larger. I could see dust swirling in it like tiny floating stars. I could see more of the walls. I could see a sliver of sky, but I couldn't see them. Not yet. As the fourth night approached, something shifted inside me. Not physically, but mentally. A numbness. A resignation. I stopped trying to talk. Stopped trying to move. Stopped trying to think about anything except keeping my eyes open. It was the coldest night yet. My teeth chattered uncontrollably. Every breath made my ribs flare with pain. The hallucinations got worse, voices whispering from the dark, water dripping in patterns that sounded like footsteps, warmth brushing past my shoulder like a hand even though I knew nothing was there. I don't remember much of that night. I think my mind was trying to protect me by shutting itself off piece by piece. But I do remember one thing. At some point, I decided I wasn't going to die down there. Whether it was rage or fear or something primal kicking in, I don't know. But I remember whispering to myself, "You're not dying here. Not like this. Not alone." I clung to that thought like a rope. When the sun rose again, at least when the light in the cave shifted enough to tell me it was daytime, I heard Daniel's voice again. "We're almost through. Hold on. Please. Hold on." I tried to respond, but nothing came out. They started drilling again, but this time it didn't feel so terrifying. Maybe because I understood it was my only way out. Maybe because I had nothing left to lose. Maybe because I was too weak to panic. Hours passed. The light grew larger, brighter. I heard them discussing sending a camera down, trying to see how I was positioned. They argued about angles, about the risk of another collapse, about whether the hole was stable enough. Then I heard it. A crack. Sharp and loud. The cave shuddered. A section of rock from somewhere above broke loose and fell, smashing against the ground just a few feet from my head. Dust filled my lungs. I coughed until I tasted blood. "Stop!" someone shouted from above. "Stop! Drilling!" More voices, more arguing. The rescuers were scared. I could hear it in their tone. They were afraid they'd kill me trying to save me. Minutes turned to hours again. The drilling paused. I lay there in silence, staring up at the shaft of sunlight. It felt warmer than before. Softer. Like it was reaching for me. I reached back, pathetically, weakly, but the gesture was enough to remind me I was still alive. Late that afternoon, they started lowering something else. I heard metal scraping against the rock, chains rattling, instructions being shouted, a harness, a pulley system. They were going to try lowering someone down. The idea terrified them. And me. If the rock gave way, both of us could be buried. But there was no other option. I was fading. Fast. Then, for the first time, I saw him. A silhouette appeared above the opening, a figure blocking the sun. Rope strapped to him. Helmet, headlamp. He began descending slowly, cautiously, kicking off the walls to steady himself. The moment his boots touched the ground near me, my entire body went limp with relief. He crouched beside me, his lamp illuminating my face. I must have looked like a ghost. Pale, bruised, blood-streaked, filthy. "You're okay," he said softly, though we both knew it wasn't true. "I've got you now." His name was Daniel, the voice I'd been hearing for 2 days. He moved carefully, assessing my injuries, checking my breathing. When he touched my leg, I screamed, but he apologized, even though he was trying to help. "We need to lift you out slowly," he said. "We'll secure you. It's going to hurt. I'm sorry." but we're getting you out." When he started strapping me into the harness, the pain became blinding. I bit down on my sleeve to keep from screaming. Every shift of my leg felt like someone was driving a hot knife through the bone. At one point, I begged him to stop, even though I knew he couldn't. "You're doing good," he said. "Just stay with me. Stay awake." I tried. God, I tried. But as they began lifting us, inch by inch, my vision darkened, and the world around me faded into a blur of light and sound. I woke once during the ascent. I remember being halfway up, the ceiling of the cave getting closer. I remember Daniel shouting instructions above me. I remember the ropes creaking. And then I passed out again. The next time I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by daylight. Real daylight. Not a thin beam, but the full sky above me. The trees, the wind, people rushing around me, hands touching my face, my arms, my chest. Someone placing an oxygen mask over my mouth. Someone else checking my pulse. "You're out," someone said. "You're safe." I didn't believe it until I felt the sunlight warming my skin. I cried then, not out of fear or pain, but out of pure, overwhelming relief. They took me to the hospital by helicopter. I drifted in and out the entire flight. I woke to bright lights and doctors' voices. Then darkness again. It took months to recover. My leg had multiple fractures. My ribs were bruised. I was severely dehydrated, malnourished, and hypothermic. They said another day, maybe even another half day, and I wouldn't have survived. I met Daniel again after the surgery. He visited me quietly, without ceremony. He said I did well, that I stayed strong. But I told him the truth. I didn't feel strong down there. I felt like I was disappearing, like the darkness was erasing pieces of me. He told me something I'll never forget. "Strength isn't about not breaking," he said. "It's about breaking and not giving up." I think about that a lot. Even now, years later, I can still smell the damp earth of that cave. I can still hear the echoes. I can still feel the cold pressing against my skin. But I also remember the moment I saw the sky again. The moment I felt the sunlight. The moment I realized I'd survived something I was sure would kill me. People ask me sometimes if I ever went back to that trail. The answer is no. And I never will, because the earth may have closed behind me, but the memory of those days underground will stay open inside me forever, like a wound that healed, but still aches when the weather changes. And I'm still here, still breathing, still grateful, even for the darkness, because it taught me to fight for the light. Thank you for listening to my story. And if you're watching this right now, do me one favor. Appreciate the ground beneath your feet. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Not safety. Not certainty. Not even solid earth. But every step you take is a gift. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing this video with someone who loves true survival stories. Stay safe out there, and may you never face the darkness alone.